This is Life with Herpes, and you're listening to episode 101, aka 101. Hello. Welcome as my voice totally cracks like I'm going through puberty. Anyways, hello and welcome. I'm Alexandra Harbushka. I am the founder of Life with Herpes. It is a blog, it is a YouTube channel, it's a podcast, but most importantly, it's a community for people just like you and just like me who are living with herpes. So if you are not a member of the community, I would love to invite you to be a member or join or come apply. Go to lifewithherpes.com. There's information on the homepage of how to do it, how to sign up, how to join. Lots of cool stuff going on. Besides, emails, not that cool, but emails, but really more importantly, there's a community for people, online community with support, so you don't feel alone if you're just diagnosed or if you've had herpes for 20 years. Regardless, it is a great place to be. All right. I'm excited to talk to you about this. This is actually my second time recording this. So I recorded this earlier, and how many times have you guys ever had your computer just do it just quit, like just a force shutdown? Or I recorded it, closed it, saved it, and it goes error. I don't know, a huge error. It just didn't save. It couldn't be recovered, didn't save. So I just went, okay, apparently that was not the episode I was supposed to release. With that being said, I have no makeup. If you're watching me in YouTube, you will see I have no makeup. My hair is still wet, and I'm going with it. I got a facial this afternoon, and I recorded this first episode before the facial because I had all the makeup on to record, and it didn't save. So I just got a facial. I am shiny. I'm glossy. Like I said, my hair's still wet. I got collagen on my lips. They are plumped up. Collagen on my face. So I should look like I'm 20 years old. But anyways, if you're watching me on YouTube, you'll see this is the facial glow. Okay. What I really want to talk to you about today is just herpes. Herpes 101, herpes in general. And when you hear the word herpes, you hear the word STD, you hear the word STI, our heart sinks. The world comes to an end. We are paralyzed, and we think, oh my gosh, that'll never happen to me. And what the heck is going on with my life? I better go Google that shit. Since launching Life with Herpes, I launched this in June 2017. I've pretty much heard everything. I've seen everything. FYI, nothing is TMI, but I've heard it all, seen it all, been asked many, many questions. And one of the main questions that keeps coming back, it goes down to what is herpes? And basically the 101. So I put together, I want this episode today to be a reference for you. So whether it is I was just diagnosed with herpes and I have all these questions, or oh my gosh, what do I tell my partner? Or I'm going to be dating someone and I want my partner to know everything there is to know about herpes. So I've basically comprised everything and put it together so that it can be a repository for you when you are just wanting to know, when you're in the 101 phase, or a reference to go back and look. Full disclosure, I am going to read some things, and the reason why I'm going to read it is I don't want to forget anything. So like I said, I really want this to be a repository or a ref for you to go back and get all the information. Everything I'm talking about will be in the show notes, so you can see that on lifewithherpes.com, and it'll reference you to this one. So it is episode 100, and then you will be able to find all this information. So like I said, I really want this to be a great repository, great 101. No one really ever wanted to be like the herpes 101 expert, but anyways, that is what I have. As I'm thinking about this, I really should have made this episode 101. So as I'm talking about this out loud, and I'm not going to re-record this for a third time because my recording software is going to work this time, this is actually episode 101. As I'm talking about it, it's episode 101. So as you're listening, you're like, Alexandra, what are you doing? You're making decisions in the middle of recording. Yes, I am. This is episode 101 for the Herpes 101. All right, so let me get going. I want to read to you some messages, some things I've heard from people about when you're first diagnosed with herpes, or just questions that I've been receiving. So I want to see if this rings a bell, sounds familiar. I definitely know these were thoughts I had when I was diagnosed, or questions. So let me just read through them. Excuse me as I totally burp after taking my vitamins and having a Pellegrino. Wow, I am being really raw with you guys right now. All right. I don't want to die from getting herpes. Ew, gross. The blisters are gross. Will they scar? Why me? I feel like my life is over. What do I do? Is the itch on my balls the herpes coming on? How did I get it? I never had sex. I've been with the same partner for 2 years now. It just showed up. How is this possible? If I have it down there, will it show up there? Okay, so do any of these sound familiar? Any questions that you probably thought? And I'm listening to these. I'm like, yeah, I had some of these questions too. Okay, except for the part about the balls, obviously. Because I don't have balls because I'm a girl. But yeah, a lot of these questions came up. Our society has done a great job of making us feel like lepers, and we've done an even better job of not educating ourselves, or the society's done an even better job of not educating us, or wanting to properly educate us on how to cope, deal, understand, move forward, and prevent transmission to future partners. So again, this is why I have this, and here's the 101. I'm going to move through this pretty quick. If this is your first time tuning in, I might sound a little monotone. I'm trying not to. It's just because I'm reading this. Like I said, I don't want to leave anything out, and I want to make sure that I get all the information that is important to you. All right, so starting off, what is herpes? Great question, right? So herpes is known as the herpes simplex virus, or HSV. There's HSV1 and HSV2. Basically, the viruses are the exact same. However, the strains are, I guess, different when you look under them a microscope. I don't know how you can tell the difference between the two strains, but I guess they are different. And we categorize them as HSV1, HSV2. HSV1, herpes simplex virus 1, is most commonly known as oral herpes, and HSV2 is most commonly known as genital herpes. Herpes. Because herpes is a virus, this means that you will have it for the rest of your life. In other words, this is the one thing you can guarantee you will have forever. It will go on vacation with you. It'll get married with you. It'll go through finding love. It'll go through job interviews. It'll go through everything in your life, and it'll be there when you die. So sorry, but we have it for the rest of our life. When the virus is not active, it goes dormant in your body. It lies dormant in your nervous system. And it's not until it wakes up, or your immune system shot, or you give it a reason to pop up, it'll then pop up to the surface of your skin, and it'll then cause an outbreak. I like to use this analogy as talking about a volcano. So some volcanoes are active, some volcanoes are inactive, some volcanoes you got no idea what the hell is going on with them. Meaning there are some people who have herpes, and their herpes is dormant. They get outbreaks every 20 years, or they get outbreaks, I don't know, once in their life. Then there's people that have full-on active outbreaks all the time, and then there's people that are like, I don't really know what's going on. It could be an outbreak, it could not be an outbreak, right? So think of it as a volcano. Kind of, some of them are popping up, some of them are not. You just never know when it's going to explode. All right, what does herpes look like? Everyone kind of describes it a little bit differently. Some people can describe it as a paper cut-like sore. Other people describe their blisters, their liquid, their fluid-type blisters, not pus blisters, but fluid. So almost like if you get a blister on your foot from wearing new shoes, that's kind of a fluid-filled blister. I would say maybe similar to that. Some outbreaks, some people have just one blister, some people have multiple, they have what's called a cluster. And just like anything in life, your blister, your outbreak will have its own life. So in the infancy of this outbreak of the blister, it might look very different on day 0 or day 1 than it would on day 10. So it's going to go through its life, meaning it's going to be a little bump, it's going to get redder, it's going to get a little more uncomfortable, then it's going to fill with liquid, then it could open up, then it's going to go to the scab phase, and then it's going to go to the healing phase. So that's kind of the cycle that it goes through. But again, everybody's is a little bit different. Just to give you an example of what these things can look like, is they could look like the lesions or blisters, you could use either word, can take the form of a red spot, a pimple, an ingrown hair, a paper cut, razor burn, and or a bug bite. So hope that kind of breaks down in your mind what these outbreaks look like. How do I know if I have herpes? The very best way to know if you have herpes is get tested. Go see a medical professional, get tested, find out, take the test. I know a lot of times people reach out to me and they'll go, oh my gosh, I think I have herpes, is it? Or, oh my gosh, I hooked up with someone who has herpes, do I have it now? What does it look like? I just want you to know that just go get tested. I know you may think that you don't want to know the answer, but it's better to know than be in this limbo stage, because that can drive you crazy. One of the things that's a little bit scary, and it's a statistic, of the people who have HSV2, herpes simplex virus 2, or commonly known as genital herpes, 80% of them don't know they have it. Meaning that's what's causing this epidemic, that's what's continuing to spread it, and that's, chances are why you and I have it, right? There's someone who didn't know they had it, and it continued to get passed and passed and passed. Let's see. I think I said it all. Oh, when you do get tested, I want you to make sure you know if you have herpes simplex virus 1 or 2. And that's going to be important down the road with future partners or potential partners, because if you have 1 and the other one has 2, you still are at risk for transmitting it back and forth to each other. So that's just important to know. And I'll get into that more later on and as I describe what's going on here. What are some of the symptoms of herpes? So there's a long list of herpes outbreak symptoms. For everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. I like to use the example of getting a cold. So we all have had a cold. We all know what a cold feels like, and we all get different symptoms of colds at different times. So we all have our triggers for a cold, and we all go, a cold's coming on. But my trigger may be totally different than your trigger. So same thing with herpes, is my symptoms may be, and they probably are, totally different than what your symptoms are. So let me read through them and let you know. It's swollen lymph nodes, swollen glands in your pelvic area, throat, or under your arms, exhaustion, headache, body aches, pain around your genitals, inflammation around your genitals, difficult peeing because the sores could block the urethra, meaning it would be stinging, it would hurt. Now, ladies, if you've had a bladder infection, trust me, this is nothing like a bladder infection. That is the worst. But for men, this might be their equivalent. I'm not sure. Probably not. Probably a bladder infection is worse. Anyways, itching and nerve pain. So for example, I personally don't get nerve pain. However, I have a lot of people in our community that have a ton of nerve pain. I personally get swollen lymph nodes, exhaustion, things like that, but everybody's going to be a little bit different. Like, I don't get itchy, I don't get nerve pain. Again, everybody's symptoms are going to be different. I really want to encourage you to pay attention to your outbreaks and find out what your symptoms are. That way you'll better be prepared to go, I'm getting an outbreak. All right, I better take my next step. Some things to think about. All right, will I die from herpes? No. You will not die from herpes. Herpes is just a skin disease, and that's it. It's a skin disease. It's not anything it's not, you're not going to die from herpes. Promise. Those are other STDs or STIs that could potentially cause death if you don't, research them or take care of them or get tested or seek proper medical help. That's a whole nother story. Today we're focusing on herpes. If I'm exposed to herpes, how long before it shows up? The typical incubation period or time is 2 days to 14 days. So it's about 2 weeks or anywhere in between 2 weeks. However, for some people, it can take weeks, months, and even years before it goes noticed. Can I be herpes positive without having an outbreak? No. So if you're testing positive for herpes, at some point you've had an outbreak. So for example, if there's a blood test administered and the test is looking, so what happens is when you have a blood test, the blood test is not looking for herpes, it's looking for the antibodies that are caused from herpes. So in order to have antibodies, you would have had to have an outbreak. So let me just give you a quick little background on antibodies. I really encourage you to go Google this part of it. I am by no means a science expert. So for example, anytime there's a foreign object coming into our body, a virus, a bacteria, whatever, fungus, whatever it is, our bodies go into this like all men on deck. What's going on? Our immune system kicks in, fighter T cells show up, and then boom, 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 we combat it, and then boom, we get antibodies. The antibodies then make it so that we could never get the same virus twice. So that's an example of why you will never get chickenpox twice, is because you have the antibodies to prevent you from getting the chickenpox again. So when they do a blood draw to test you for herpes, what they're doing is they're looking for the antibodies, the herpes antibody. So in order to have the antibody, you would have at some point had to have had an outbreak. Now this outbreak could be minute, it could be small, it could have been misdiagnosed, it could have been, we could have thought it was an ingrown hair, could have been whatever. But in order to have a blood test, you would have had an outbreak at some point. How do you test for herpes? There's a couple of ways to do it. There's a couple of tests. Basically, it boils down to blood or swab. Typically, if you are someone that has blisters or showing blisters and you go in, like I have blisters down there, and you go in your doctor and you're freaking out, like we all did, they will swab it. It looks like it's not a Q-tip, but it looks like a Q-tip. They'll swab it. They'll send that to the lab. What they're doing is they're testing to see if the herpes virus is active in that blister. If there are no blisters, let's say, for example, you're going just for a regular routine STD check and they're drawing the blood, what they're doing is they're looking for the antibodies, kind of like what I just described. I go way into detail on this. I spent like a long time researching it. It's on episode 85. I'm going to encourage you to circle back if you have more questions on testing. But this is just the 101, how we test for it. Are oral herpes and genital herpes different? Yes and no. So they're both herpes. Herpes is herpes is herpes. However, they could be different strains. So earlier I mentioned there's HSV1, HSV2. HSV1 is typically associated with oral herpes, and HSV2 is typically associated with genital herpes. However, any way you give it the opportunity to go, it could potentially go there. So oral herpes can potentially end up being genital herpes, meaning it could be the exact same strain. So oral herpes could be HSV1. You could also have HSV1 in your genital region. Makes sense? Or vice versa. So yeah, it can go to either spot wherever you give it the opportunity to go to. It is not going to just randomly pop up somewhere. So if you have it orally, it's not going to like randomly pop up genitally unless you give it, again, an opportunity to go there by transferring it. All right, what are the signs of genital herpes? Genital herpes can appear anywhere in the genital region, meaning, so for both men and women, because we both share these body parts, it can be your butt, your anus, like your actual asshole. Sounds so funny to say, like your actual asshole. Inside your thighs, in your inner thigh region, your butt region, or even below your belly button, kind of in that pelvic area. For men, specifically, it can be on your penis, on your balls, whatever words you want to use, dick, scrotum, whatever. It can just be in that region. And for women, we can have it. Have our outbreaks anywhere in our vagina, so anywhere in the inner lips, like labia minora, majora, within the vaginal opening, actually in the vaginal canal, on the cervix, And so, yeah, that's kind of the areas that it can be in. So, for example, think of it as kind of in your pelvic area is where the herpes virus can pop up. So everyone's a little bit different. And that's really important to know because a lot of people think like, oh, I'm getting ahead of my game here on some of my questions, but people will be like, oh, well, I didn't have sex, but we cuddled. Well, if that person has outbreaks on, the top of their pelvis and you're spooning and all of a sudden you get herpes on your butt, well, it was skin to skin that way. Makes sense? Okay. Is a cold sore herpes? Yes. Cold sores, fever, blisters, they're herpes. We just sugarcoat the name, which actually really pisses me off that we sugarcoat the name because we want people with genital herpes to feel awful and people with oral herpes to be like, oh, it's just a cold sore. But yeah, it is the exact same thing. If I have oral herpes, can I get an outbreak genitally or vice versa? So, for example, like I kind of was explaining earlier, I say orally, earlier. If you have HSV1 and it's orally, then you will get outbreaks orally. If you have HSV2 and get outbreaks genitally, you'll get outbreaks genitally. A lot of times people will ask me, I have genital HSV1, does it mean it'll also show up on my mouth? No, unless you give it a reason to go there. So things like oral sex or if your hands touch it and then you touch their mouth, then yeah, you can give it a way to go there. But it is not just going to randomly pop up. How is herpes transmitted? I keep jumping the gun on all my questions. Herpes is skin to skin. So again, think of an example. I'm using my right hand. This is an infected hand with herpes. This left hand is an uninfected hand with herpes. If I put them together, shake my hands, rub my hands together, then I have then just done skin-to-skin contact, and chances are I've infected my left hand with herpes. So think about in any body part. Ideally, the herpes virus likes the mouth and the genital region. However, it could go anywhere you give it an area to go if you have a cut or something. But remember, it likes the oral and genital region. I want you to also be aware, and this is how a lot of it happens, is let's say you have an outbreak, you take a sip of a glass of a beer, wine, water, someone else picks up the same beer, you had an active outbreak, that person now could be infected. Another way that happens a lot with us girls are, lipsticks, lip glosses, sharing makeup, things like that, sharing of things. The herpes virus can live on the lipstick, so it can be a vehicle in which to get it to the other person's mouth. What sexual acts can transmit herpes? I hate to be Eeyore here, but pretty much any sexual act can transmit herpes. I know. It is a bummer. I have a whole episode on this, so I really encourage you to listen to it. I don't think it's out yet, but I know I've recorded it. Just to be clear on this, to make sure that you know, so you're doing everything possible to inform your partner and protect your partner. The sexual acts that can transmit herpes are vaginal sex, oral sex, anal sex, foreplay, fingering, fondling, masturbation, hand jobs. I think I have that all. So all of these things can transmit herpes. Again, skin to skin. So if you have come into contact with it, it can be transmitted. How common is herpes? Okay, herpes is so common, I can guarantee that someone in your family or someone that you're really close to has it. If you don't know about it, they're just not telling you. All right, so that's how common it is. Please don't feel alone. I guarantee you someone has it. So for example, HSV1, 2 out of 3 people have it. That means 217 million Americans have HSV1. HSV2, 1 out of 6 people, or 25 million Americans have it. That's a lot. You add those two people that together, that's a lot, right? That's a lot. So please don't feel alone. I do not want you to feel alone. And a lot of us have it. How do I get tested for herpes? Okay, so one of the reasons why it's so taboo and it's becoming an epidemic is we're not including this in our STD checkup. I know I talked about this a little bit earlier. So we're not including this in our STD checkup. As a patient, you specifically have to ask for the herpes test. Why this is beyond me. I am not sure. I don't know why. But I think it's because of the taboo. I think it's because of the stigma. I think people are thinking, hey, if you don't show signs, why would the aftermath of learning you have herpes, as we know, can be so detrimental that people are saying, why test it? But I think that's wrong. Anyways, what I recommend, go to your Planned Parenthood or your local healthcare provider and ask them for a herpes test. Here I have some stats for you, which I'm excited to give you. They're pretty astonishing. So like I mentioned earlier, I'll just go over it again. 2 out of 3, or 217 million Americans, have HSV1. 1 out of 6, or 25 million Americans, have HSV2. Excuse me, I have to take a sip. So this is not good for us ladies. It's good for you men, but 25% of women and 20% of men have HSV2. So 5% more of women have herpes than men. Why that is, I don't know. Now, based on some of these statistics, these statistics are based on no sex during active outbreaks, non-use of daily antivirals, and non-use of condoms. So basically, no protection whatsoever. Herpes male to non-herpes female transmission rate is 10%. Herpes female to non-herpes male transmission rate is 4%. Back to more women have herpes than men. And basically the reason for that is just our anatomy. It's just the way we're built. It's just the way our anatomy is. So more women are not able is a bad word. More women are contracting herpes just based on our anatomy. Condoms reduce transmission by 30 to 50%. That's really good to know. I also want to point that out. Condoms reduce transmission 30 to 50%. This is not 100%. This is not the old trick, oh, just use a condom and you're fine. Reduces transmission rate by 30 to 50%. Yes, it definitely helps, and I highly recommend you using it, but don't think that, oh, I can just use a condom and not tell anybody. It still doesn't cover it up. Daily antiviral suppression reduces transmission by 48%. So taking a daily antiviral can reduce the transmission to close to 50%, but it's not, it's 48%. 50% of genital transmission via oral sex are from HSV1. So that's a really big number. A lot of people are getting genital herpes from oral sex. And this goes back to the lack of education. I personally believe the lack of education of saying, oh, oral sex, you can't get STDs, but sex, you can, right? Just remember that with oral sex, yes, you can still contract an array of them. Specifically, you and I are talking about herpes. Just to give you a quick lowdown on the references, this came from the American Sexual Health Association, also known as ASHA, Center of Disease Control, also known as the CDC, Planned Parenthood, and WebMD. So if you have any questions on this, I invite you to go research it and look it up. All right, I just went through a ton of information getting this out to you. I apologize for being monotone or being really direct with you, but I just want to get it out, make sure you have it. Go back, listen to this again, reference it, use it for your knowledge to kind of get the 101, the foundation to what actually herpes is. All right, my friend, thank you for being here. I am so grateful to be here with you. If you have any questions, DM me. If you are not a member of Life with Herpes community, what are you thinking? Come over, join, go to lifewithherpes.com, sign up, join, say hi, find other people just like you and me who have herpes. There's hundreds of people over there. So come on over. I will see you all soon, and have an awesome rest of your day. All right. Bye. Oh, and thanks for bearing with me through my facial look. Okay. Bye.